Hey there, this is Mahmoud and welcome back to my third Flutter tutorial. Today we will create a simple Flutter application using Dart programming language. So in the application, when you run in the simulator or emulator, you will see this kind of interface. At the top you will see a profile picture. So we will learn how to create profile picture widget and make it rounded shape. Then we will create a user name with external font. So you will learn how to import external font in your application and make your user interface looks better. And finally we will create 4 card. It looks like a button, but basically it's a card. So we will learn how to create a card from scratch, how to use the material icon, how to use the material user interface guideline. So we will use all of those concepts in our application, and later we will refactor the code and use the Flutter built-in card widget to solve the problem. And finally we will add some interactivity. For example, if you click this URL link, you will see a separate UI screen is opened and the web page will be loaded in here. So we will learn how to do this kind of interactivity in our Flutter application. And for this case we will import a third-party library. So we will also learn how to import third-party library in our application. If you click this phone number or email, you will see a alert box will be shown and it gives you a notification that this cannot be done, because if you want to use the phone and email, you have to test in the real device. So I have shown a video in here. You will see that when I tested the application in the real device, the phone call and the email thing will be working. In any case, if you want to just download the code for this application, you have to visit github.com/mahmoodhasan. Then you have to click this ThinkDiff link, and here you will see there is a Flutter link. You have to click that, and then you will see there is a short profile link, so you have to click that. Then you will see this image will be shown that what we have to do in this application, and all the code is in here. So you can just check out this code and test yourself if you do not want to write the code. But I prefer that you should write the code, because unless you write the code yourself, you will not get the concept clearly. So it's always, when you learn a new concept, new programming, you always should type your code by hand. It will help you to be master on that content. So let's start. So I created a project using Android Studio and I give the name short_profile for this Flutter project, and I save this project in my desktop demo directory. So this is the template code. When you create a new project in Flutter, you will see this kind of code. So I will remove all the code in here. I will only leave this package :flutter material.dart. So I will only use this material.dart package in our code. So let's run a main function. So void main, and I am going to using the arrow function, and here I will use the built-in method runapp, and within runapp I will create a widget. So everything is widget in Flutter app. So I give the name my app. So I did not declare any my app class or my app widget, so let's declare. So in Flutter, if you just in Android Studio, if you use the shortcut keyword Stateless, you will and click enter, you will get a template for the Stateless widget. So here we will give the name my app. So this is our stateless widget my app, which we are creating or instantiating within this run app function. In Flutter there are two kinds of widget. One is called stateless widget, another one is called stateful widget. Today we are going to use only stateless widget. If you ever worked React.js in web, you will know that what is state within a component. There are two kinds of component in React. One is stateless functional component, another was stateful component. So basically Flutter followed the same concept from React. So here we are declaring a stateless widget, and the widget name is my app. So you have to create the user interface within the build method. So, and the build method, basically you are going to override the stateless widget build method and it will return a widget. So let's run this program. If you use Mac, you can use iPhone X simulator, but if you do not have Mac, you have to create a Android emulator and you can open Android emulator. Or if you want to test in real device, you just connect your real device and on the developer mode, then you can see this device in here. So I have to run this code in my iPhone X simulator. When the app is running, you see there is nothing showing in the screen. It's just a blank black screen. So let's create a user interface. So at first we want to create a widget of material app. So I will remove this container keyword and use this material app widget. And within material app, we will use another widget. So, and that widget will be in the home section. And we will use the name of the widget is home. So home is yet not declared. So let's declare within outside of this my app class. So again I will type STLESS and you will get this template code, and here I will write home. So if I now save this thing and still it is black screen, so I will change that. So this new widget home, which is also extending this stateless widget, and we are going to override the build method. So when you are creating a new widget, you have to override the build method and make your own interface on there. So here we will use a scaffold widget. So within the scaffold, we will change the background color, for example colors, then dot and the static property till, and within a we give a 200 shade. So now you see the color of this scaffold area background is changed, right? So now we will add another thing. What we want to add, we want to add a body of this scaffold widget. So you may ask me how I learned this scaffold widget or material app widget. This thing basically described in the Flutter documentation. If you just visit Flutter and documentation and search this material app or scaffold, you will get the description. And now in the body, let's create a widget. So here I will use a safe area widget. This is basically layout widget. And safe area, why safe area? Because you see this iPhone X emulator, there is a top notch, right? So if I create something, maybe an important button will be under this top notch. So to restrict such kind of thing, you always better in your when you are going to use material app and scaffold, you should use the safe area layout widget. And here there is one property, that is child, and here suppose we want to add a text widget, hello Flutter, and if I save this thing, you will see hello Flutter is showing here. But if I do not use safe area, suppose I use this thing and I just add this body. Within body I use a container, suppose, and container also has a child, and if I put hello Flutter here, you will see this hello Flutter is in the top section. So you can see the difference, that if I just change this container to safe area, the thing will in the safe area. So always better to use safe area when you are going to use material app and scaffold. Now let's focus on the design. We want to design this kind of thing. So if you look carefully in this screenshot, you will see there is basically one column, right? If you just think about a column, this full thing contains one column, and within one column you will see there is top picture, then name, then designation, and then some card. So we want to, instead of this text widget in the safe area child, we will use a column layout widget. So in the column we can add some children. So children basically a list, and here if we put something, for example here I put text 1 and then comma, then text 2 comma. If I save, you see here is 1 and 2 is showing. at the top left, right? So this is basically one column. And now instead of using text1 or text2, we will use the picture, like our screenshot. So to do that, let's use a picture. So in our short profile directory, we'll create another directory, and I give the name images, and here I will just copy and drag and drop this image thing on that directory. So this image thing, my image is copied in this images directory, and now we have to update our pubspec.yml. So in the pubspec.yml file, we have to change the asset thing. So here you see that there is a comment asset, so we will remove this comment notation, and then we will also change this thing. So here basically there is under asset there is 2 space and then a dash and then images for our directory. So that means any image under this images directory we can now use in our app. So now come to the main.dart file, and here in the first, currently there is no widget in the column, right? So we will use a image widget. So to show the image as a circular, we can use a circular avatar widget, that is called circle avatar widget, circle avatar. So if I just write this thing, and here there is a background image property where I will use asset image, and here I will put the name images and then my image name. And if I run save, you see my image is showing here, very small image, but I want to look it's kind of big. So and I want to make this thing in the center of this layout, right? So column also has a property that is called main axis alignment. So main axis means from top to bottom, that is the main axis for column, and cross axis mean from left to right, that is for column. And if you want to use the row widget, row layout widget, there the main axis concept and the cross axis concept is totally opposite. So here I give this main axis alignment, and I put it center. And if I save this, you will see now this image is showing in the center. Also I want to change the radius of this thing, and I will use radius 50. So if I use radius 50, you see the image is now become bigger. If I suppose use 100, it looks more bigger, but for this app we are going to use the radius 50. And now let's add some other widget. Now we want to add 2 text widget. One is the name, another is the designation. So after circular avatar, let's create 2 text widget, text, and here the text. So I am putting my name, you have to put your name, and then if I just save, you see Mahmoud Hassan is showing here. And I also want to change the style a bit. So in text widget there is a property called style. So here you can use some text style. So you have to use the text style widget, and using text style you can give some more property. For example, for font size, suppose I want to give 40.0, and then for the color I want to use white color, so color.white, and then font weight, I want to make this font bold, so I use font weight and font weight dot bold. So if I save this thing, you see now this font looks bolder and bigger, right? And another thing, if you carefully notice that if you know HTML CSS, you will see that in Flutter the property, especially style properties, are similar to the CSS, like font size, color, background image, background color. These are the common term which we use in CSS as well. So if you know CSS, then styling in Flutter is easier than if you don't know any CSS. Anyway, so let's create another widget. So after this text, I will put another widget. text, and in this time the thing will be software engineer, and then I also want to put style, text style, and here I will use in this case I can use the font size might be a bit smaller than the main name, so 30.0. then color should be colors.teal, and we can also put some shade here, maybe 50. And then if I save, you see there is another widget is showing in here. I can also change the letter spacing. For example, if I give 2.5, you see the letter is a bit spaced, right? And also I want to make the font bold, font weight to font weight dot bold. So now we have added and 3 widgets, a picture, rounded picture, a name, and the software engineer. But these 2 text does not looks good, right? They don't look very nice, so we want to use external font. So for this case I will use my Google Chrome, and I will visit this Google fonts, and here you will see there are many kind of fonts. So here you will see this nice font. You just click here, Pacifico, and here you can download this font from here. So you have to select this font, and then here you can click here this download icon and download. So then the font will be download in your download directory. So this Pacifico font we will be using in the name section. So we want to use another font, and in this case let's search the font name, for example Source Sans Pro. Source Sans. So here the Source Sans Pro. You can use any font, but I like to use these 2 font, and here you click select, and then in the download section you just click this download button, and the font will be downloaded in your system. Now go to in your Finder directory where the font is downloaded, and just unzip this thing, and I am getting this 2 folder with the font. Now open your Android Studio, and here create another directory in the short profile. So new directory, and give the name of the directory fonts, and now copy this specific regular.ttf in this fonts directory. And also I want to use this Source Sans Pro. So here also there is a regular thing. So here Source Sans Pro regular, just copy this font in your fonts directory in the app. So now these 2 fonts copied in our Android project. Now we have to update our pubspec.yml. So here you will see a font section, that how to include fonts. So just uncomment those things, and then you can able to use the font. So I give the family name for this first font, the Pacifico, so that I can use in the app just by mentioning Pacifico. And then in case after the family you have to give the font's name. So here in the assets section I have to give the location, right? So in our short profile project there is a font directory, so here it is the font directory mentioned in here, and then I am giving the font's name. So it will be pacifico-regular.ttf. and similarly I want to add another font, so I just copy this 3 line and paste it here, and in this case the second family name should be Source Sans Pro. You can give space here, no problem. And in the font section for the fonts I will use the font's actual name, so that will be Source Sans Pro -regular.ttf. YML file is very sensitive to space, so you have to use the space and this kind of thing very carefully. otherwise it will not work. So I adjusted the space here, and let's save this thing and go to the main our code. So here it is telling that the pub spec has been edited. You can click the get dependencies. If there is any dependency thing we add, that will be imported, but we only just added our fonts, and that is within from the asset directory. So anyway, let's now use the first font. So after font weight, I give the font name. So you have to use the font family. So for font family, I will use the Pacifico. You have to stop your running app and then full run or full reload the application, and then you will see the font will be updated. Otherwise, when you use external font in your app, it may not work, just hot reload. So now you see this Mahmoud Hassan looks different from our previous screen. Also for the software engineer, if I remove this font family now, you see this font become the default font. But when I use the external font family Source Sans Pro, you will see that this software engineer, this text become with our updated font, that is that Source Sans Pro. So this is how we can include external font in our application, and you have to remember that you have to carefully update this font name and this thing in the pubspec.yml file with proper space, that is 2 space. And also when you include external font, you must stop the application and full reload, otherwise the first time this font will not work. Now let's create a line. You see here is a line showing, right? So that is using the sized box widget, we can create a line. So here I have to write sized, then box, and here in the size box I will put, sorry, I think I did a mistake. This size box will be after this text widget. So here I will use the height suppose 20, and for the width I want to use 200. And if I save, still I am not showing anything. So because I have to use a child, so I have to use the child property where I want to use the divider. So divider, basically that horizontal line, this horizontal line is the divider. So in the divider I will change the colors dot teal, and I will use dot shade 700. So if I save this thing, you see now that after software engineer there is a divider within the size box is showing. So this widget is done. Now I want to work for the next widget, like this card widget. So first we want to create this widget from scratch, and then we will use the built-in widget. So let's break this widget. So here you see, you can think this as a container, right? This white box as a container. Within the container there is an icon, and there is a text, and there are some gap, and this is the card. So in Flutter there is a container layout widget. We can use this for here. So here after the size box, let's create a container widget. This is also a layout widget where we can put other widget. So in the container, if I save this, there is when I put a container, it automatically expanded the area. Basically when you put a container, if you want to see how it takes the space, just click this Flutter inspector and then this box, this button here, you see now this container is showing in here. So if I remove this container and I save, you see this only takes this space. So after I put this container, it takes the available space of the parent widget. So that's why this layout now looks centered and better. So let's add some other widget in the container. So at first I want to add a child, and if you want to remove this this sketch line thing, just click this button and it will be gone. So in the child I want to add a row. You see here there is you can think this container as a row. Within the container there should be as a row, and within the row there is an icon and a text. So let's write row widget here. If you want to get more information, what is row, what is column, just go to the Flutter docs documentation, and here if you search, go to the search here like row, you will see this row class widget library, and here how this row class widget works, the description is in here, you can just read it. Similarly, if you want to search other API like column, just search and you will see that how this column thing works. All the description are in here. So basically when you learn something, you have to understand some fundamental widget or fundamental library, and based on that, if you search in Google, you can learn other libraries as well. Within a row we can put a icon and a text, and material app in Flutter also contains some built-in icons. So if you search in here material icons, and you will get this link metal.io tools, and here you will see there are many icons loaded here. For example, if we want to use a phone icon, we can use this phone icon. So you just search in here and just check the name, and which we can use in our Flutter app without including anything. So for example, here in the child we are using a row widget, and in the row we want to add a icon. So for this we have to put the first parameter as icons.phone. We want to use the phone icon. So here I am added the phone, and also want to change the colors.teal. And if I save this, it is showing an error. Let's see why it is showing an error. Okay, so after row there should be a children property where you have to add a widget. So now you see here is a phone icon is showing in the tilt color, right? And in the container there is basically no color, so we want to put a color in the container. So that color should be colors.white. Now you see this this white container box is showing, but it does not looks good, so we want to add some padding. So padding concept is similar to CSS, but here when you give a padding property, you have to use the edge insets this class, and there are some property is inset dot. If you click if you write dot, you will see all the property. So here we want to use the all property, and we want to give 10.0. so that means in all side, top, right, bottom, left, you have to put 10 padding in here. And if you want to see how this thing works, just click Flutter inspector and give this button. You see now here you see that light blue color is showing after this white box. That means this padding is applied. So if I give 20 for example, you see this light blue box is increased. So this is how padding works in Flutter, and I just remove this thing. There is one issue. So if I click again, this padding things basically inside the container, but we also want to use a margin so that it looks better. So for this reason I want to put a margin property here, and I will use the same edge.inset edge insets, and I will use symmetric. So here I want to put a vertical property 10.0 and horizontal property 25.0. So now you see this card looks a bit better. And if I click this button, you see here is the margin applied in the after this padding there is the margin, and here 25 is the horizontal, right? So you see this 25 horizontal and 10 vertical. So by using the measurement, you can understand that how this vertical and horizontal in symmetric works. So now this looks better. So after the icon widget, I want to add a text widget. So I write text and I put a comma after the text, and within the text I put a number, for example plus 880123456789, for example, a sample text number. So this is a phone number, but it also does not looks good, so let's give some style it in here. So I want to put some color, so I want to give colors dot teal, and I want to use shade 900, and then I want to also change the font, so I give font family, and I want to put font family Source Sans Pro. Oh, I did a mistake. So when you give a style in text, you have to use the style property, and then is text style widget, and there you can put the property name. So if I save, you see the font looks different now. Also I want to put a font size 20.0. so now it looks bigger, but the problem is it is stick with the phone icon, so we want to add a gap between this phone icon and the text. So above this text widget, we want to use the sized box widget. Size box basically a layout widget, so it contains nothing. So we want to give some like width 10.10, and now it looks there is a gap, so it looks much better. So this is how we can create a card from scratch, but now I will show you how to use the built-in card widget to create this kind of card design. In Flutter docs, if you search card in search API docs, you will get this card class, and it is a material design card, and using this code and this card class you can create nice card in your Flutter app. So now let's use this card in our app. So I open this Android Studio again, and here we have 4 widgets, right? So the first widget we created from scratch, but I will later remove this code. Now let's create the second widget by using the card class, that is the built-in class from Flutter. So after this first row widget, this child within the container, so I have to, yes, after the container let's create another widget. So in this case I will use the second widget, also in this case the card widget. So here I put the card, and now I want to write something. So the color of this card should be white like our raw widget. So colors dot white, and then I want to add a child. So for the child, in this case I can use list of tile. So list tile, basically the icon, we want to use list tile, and here in the list tile we can, in the leading section, if you check the documentation what is list tile, you can see here the when you want to add a icon, you can use this list tile, and then the you can use the leading property within this list tile widget and put the icon. So let's try again. In the list tile I will use the leading and then icon. So in the icon I will use the icon from material app design. So in our case the icon will be the icons.email. We want to use the email icon, and we want to give a color. So the color should be colors.teal. If I save, now you see this email icon is added in here, and now I want to give a text. So after this leading, let's provide a title, and then the text widget. So in the text widget I type the email. So for example, mahmood@example.com. You can write your name with different email address, and then I want to provide a style in the text style object. So here in the font family I will use Source Sans Pro, then font size will be 20.0 and the color will be colors.teal. The C should be in capital letter. Okay, now if I save this thing, you see now it looks way better than the previous card. We can also use some other property in our container card to look like this, but as there is a built-in widget, it's better to use that widget. And there is some padding and margin issue, so let's adjust this thing. So in the card section, after the color we can put a margin so that it looks nicer. So we will use edge insets, and symmetric for vertical we use 10 like previously we use in here in the container section, and the horizontal we use 25.0. If I save, you see this card is created in here and it looks nicer than our previous card. But we can also use some other property in the container to use and create this card like this. Anyway, so here is the thing. So now I have shown you that how to use a card from scratch and how to create a card using the built-in card widget. Another thing, when you want to know that for a widget what kind of properties are available, so for example I want to know what kind of properties are available for this card widget, I put my cursor inside the card and I press Ctrl Z, and then I can get this kind of information that what are the properties available for this card widget. So this is quite helpful when you write code in Flutter. Now for this card, the second card mahmood@example.com, we want to add a functionality. For here we want to see that whether if there is any click thing happen, we want to write some interactivity, right? So to do this we will use another object or another class that is called gesture or gesture detector. So to do that, first select this card and click alter in or option in your Mac, in Windows alter, and press enter. Then you see this kind of pop-up menu will be shown. So here I will click wrap with a new widget, and here the widget name will be gesture detector. So gesture detector basically can detect in an area that whether any click thing happen or not. So in the gesture detector there is a property on tap. We will use this on tap property to know that if user tap this card or not. So on tap we are providing a anonymous function, and here just write print email, nothing else. Just want to check that whether this gesture detector works or not. So if I click this thing, you see now in the terminal here it is showing Flutter email. If I click again, it is showing Flutter email. But if I click this above card, there is nothing shown in the terminal because we did not add any gesture functionality in the above card. So this is how we can add interactivity in a certain area or certain user interface. Basically to create button, there are material button available in the Flutter docs. If you visit Flutter and then click docs, and here in the widget catalog, if you click there, here you will see there are material components, and the material component you see scaffold, which we are using in here, how to use app bar, how to use bottom navigation. Then you will see here is button, raise button, flat button, or floating action button. But in this scenario we are not using button, but we are using an user interface or a widget which we want to use as looks like a button. So this card is now interactivate when user tap on that card. Now we want to refactor our code. So instead of writing everything in this single file, we want to separate this card widget. So to do that, we just we just cut this gesture detector part from here, and in our lib directory let's create another directory. The directory name is widgets, and if you use React, that directory name normally will be component, but I prefer to use widgets in here. And here you can create a new Dart file, and I give the name is info_card.dart. So we created a new file, info_card.dart, and here let's first import the material library. So import package, then Flutter material. Now create a class, stateless class, and the class name is info_card, and here return container we want to use return and this gesture detector. Okay, so our info card is created here, and now what we want to do, we want to pass some properties so that we can reuse this card to create other cards. So here you see that we have 4 cards basically, and 4 different icon, and 3 different functionality, and different text. So we want to use this code as much reusable as possible. So let's give some property. So the first property is the text. So I will give the property name text, and it will be string, then icon data for icon, and the third property is the function on press. So these 3 property these 3 parameter will pass when we call from our main widget, and I define this as final because within this widget this thing will not be changed. And on press basically will be a function, and in Flutter or in Dart programming language, function is also subclass of function class type. So every function is an object which is a subtype of this function class. So I can pass any function and use assign in this onPressed property. Now define a constructor. So info card, and here I will use the first 2 text and icon is required. So I passed an annotation required, and here I will use this dot text. If you don't know how this dot text works, you just check my previous video about Dart programming language where I describe how the class, the constructor thing works. And here the required means this is an annotation. That means this property must have to provide when you want to instantiate of this class. So this dot text, whatever I pass as the first parameter will be assigned in the here. Then the second another annotation required this dot icon, and third parameter this dot on press which is not required, and a semicolon. Now here in the on tab I just pass this on pressed function in here, and here in the text section I just remove this email and use the text which will be passed from outside. And in the icon dot email, here inside instead of icons dot email I want to use this icon data, that is icon data and icon. So our info card is ready to reuse in our main widget. Now come to the main.dart file, and let's import that widget info card which we declared in our main widget. So write import, then package, and then you can use your project name, short profile, then widget, and then the file name info card. So the code in the info card will be imported in the main.dart file. Now let's declare 3 compile time constant, URL, email, and phone, which we will be using in our and a location, const location Melaka, Malaysia, which we will be going to use in our card within the main widget. And now remove this all this thing, like after size box we want to, there is a widget, right? Phone widget is showing. We also want to remove that thing, so remove this container as well. Now there is nothing in here. Okay, so let's add our first widget, that info card. So I will type info card, and the first 2 parameter is required, so we have to pass that thing. So the text is the phone number we defined defined as a constant in here, the phone. So in the first card widget we are passing this phone, and as a icon we will pass icons.phone, and then when user will click the card, what will happen, we will pass in here. So on press we will pass an anonymous function, and here I will just want to write phone, nothing else, and saved. Now if I click here, you see here it is showing Flutter phone, right? Now copy this info card and paste in here, and here instead of icons on phone we want to use email, and as a here text we also want to use the email, and here we want to write email. So here now you see that email is showing with an email icon, right? And if I click this email thing, you will see here it is showing email, and here it is showing phone. But later we will basically replace this functionality. So let's another 2 card. So this card will be the URL, and the icon will be URL, or there should be web icon, not URL, so web, and I just pass web. And for the location I want to use text location, and there is another icon, location city. So you may ask me how I get this icon. Just visit your material icons. As I told you, here you will see all the icons that is by default provided in the Flutter app. You just use the name after the icons class name. So icons dot that icon name, right? And here I just put location. So you see our 4th card is designed perfectly and everything working as expected. So now we will import third-party library to define different functionality. So in this section you learn that how to create reusable code by separating our code. So when we design, we can use in the main library or main code, and then we can separate our code in separate library, and we can reuse for our purpose. So to calling a number and send an email and loading a URL, we want to add a Flutter library from third party. So if I search URL launcher, you will see there is a URL launcher package is showing in the pub.dev. So all the third-party library you can find in the pub.dev. So here is the URL launcher package, and here is a description how to use this library in your code. So let's use this library. So at first I have to install this library, right? So here in the install tab you will see that under the dependencies you have to put this text. So let's copy this thing, go to the Android widget, our Android project, and in the pub.spec, here in the dependency you see there is a Cupertino icon. So after this thing you just paste this thing here, save this file and click package.get. So then this library will be imported, and if you after importing, if you click this external library and Flutter plugins or Dart packages, I think you will see in Flutter plugin maybe, and here you will see that URL launcher 5.0.3 is imported in your project. Now come to the main section. So after importing the package we need to import the library. So here we want to import that library, import package ckj, then the name is URL launcher.dart, and then I will give it as an alias, so as an launcher. So it is basically you can, without using this launcher you can use this. Basically when there is different library, it's better to give a alias so that the function name or other class name is not using as the top level, and using an alias you can use that, or using a namespace you can use those feature. This will be easier to understand that from which package you are using which function. So we are using all the function defined in URL launcher by launcher then dot. So here launcher is working as a namespace. So now go to the documentation, and here if I go to the readme, here you will see that how to load a URL. So here basically the function is defined, right? You just copy this inner thing and go to your Android project, and here in the web section I just paste the code, and this is showing a red icon. Basically this is an asynchronous function. So what is asynchronous function I yet not described. Just remember that when you want to do something that may take time, for example you are calling an API and data is coming, you have to define that functionality using an asynchronous function, not synchronous function. And to use asynchronous function you have to define the function as async by async keyword. I define this on page and asynchronous function, and for the URL I will just remove this thing and I will use the URL defined in our URL section. So here this URL thing should work, and here can launch, basically top level function, I just put launcher.can launch. So now this thing will work. Let's describe this code. And here could not launch URL, we can put this thing as a print function, print error, nothing else, suppose, for simplicity. So here basically when user click this URL, I click here. Oh, and when you import external library you have to stop your application and full reload. Otherwise the imported library will not compile and install in your app. So that's why the first time when I press it is not working. Now after I stop and full reload it will work. Now if I click this URL, you see another screen is open in our iPhone X simulator and the web is loading in here. So what is happening in the code? So on page is basically an asynchronous function. So when I click this, here there is an if logic that launcher.can launch function basically check that if this URL is a valid URL and can be loaded or not. If this is a valid URL, then it will use the launch function to load the URL in the screen. And here in both cases I am passing await because if this is an asynchronous checking, so it will not go to the next section until this section is done. So after this logic is fully checked and it is okay, then it comes to this section. So here I also use await. So suppose here I write some other statement. So until this statement is completed, the next statement will not run. So that's why we are using await keyword before any asynchronous operation. And if there is an error, that will be shown in here. Later we will put an error pop-up box. Okay, so now this functionality is done. Let's copy this code and use in our other section. So on press this, copy this thing and paste in the email section, also in the phone section. For address we did not provide any functionality, only phone, email and URL section we provide functionality. So for the email, there if you check the documentation, you see that you have to write email address like this way, like mail to then colon like this. So we have to write a bit more code for the email. So here I am writing final email address. So we are providing a sample email address here, right, email, but we have to add something more. So here mail to then colon then our email address. So this is our final email address. And here launcher.can launch, here I will put that email address. If it works, then launcher.launch, and here I will pass that email address. Otherwise it shows an error, for example error email. So now if I save and if I click this email, it is showing an error because in simulator this thing will not work. You have to test on real device. Anyway, now come to the phone section. So in the phone section, there is a, you see, for to show the phone number beautifully, we just use some space, right? So when we use this code, we want to call, we have to remove this space by program. So let's write that thing in here. So we will use a regular expression. You can just copy this thing from my GitHub code. So here using this replace all string method and this regular expression can remove the space from the phone number, and then I use that phone number in the final phone call. And here you have to use this tail, then colon, then the phone number, and then I just put this phone call in this here, phone call, and here error phone. So this thing also will not work in the simulator. You see error phone is showing in here because you have to test on the real device. So our app is almost done. Now we will create an alert box. Now let's create an alert dialog. So here I have defined a private method underscore show dialog. So you cannot use this method outside of this class. And here you have to pass 3 parameters. One is the context, build context, another 2 is the optional string title and string message. So context basically is a fundamental and the required parameter in the widget. You see many cases there is a context, like when you create a widget build, you will see that build context parameter. Basically in Flutter, every widget contains other widget, and this build context, if you search in the Flutter documentation, if you come to here and here if you search build context, you can get the description of what this thing will work like. Build context class handle the location of a widget in the widget tree. So when you are using a widget within a widget tree, this build context contains the location of that point. So that's why when you have to create many widget, you have to pass this build context property, so that Flutter understand that from which location this thing is working. So anyway, so here I am passing this 3 parameter, and then I am creating an alert dialog here where I am creating this title and content by 2 text widget, and we are passing this title and message, string message, which we are using in here. And then the actions section, I am you can pass a list. So here I am passing a raised button, and there is a on press method. So navigator.pop, if it will click, it will disappear the widget, and there is a child text, and in the text there will be a closed text and with some style. And then using the show dialog method, I am passing this context, and in the builder I am passing this dialog object. Okay, so let's use this thing in the phone section. So in the phone section, if there is an error, we can use this show dialog method to show this. Instead of showing this error phone in the terminal, we can use our show dialog method, pass this context. This context basically this context we are passing in the main widget. There is a context, right? Build context.context, and this context we are passing in here. So when this thing, our show dialog will work, it will understand that from which location this thing is calling, right? So here we are passing this context, then we are passing the sorry title and a message. So this thing will be passed in here. So if I click now this phone button, you see this alert box is showing. So this is also a material alert box. So we are using this alert box, title and content. You see this title thing is showing here, content thing is showing here, and the action section here we are just passing one raised button, and we change the color to teal. You see this raised button, close button color become teal, and the foreground color is white. Here you see this foreground color, this close color, text color is white, which we are passing in here. And when we click this close button, you see this on pressed, this part is executing. That's why that will be disappeared. So let's reuse this code again. So show dialog in the email section as well. Instead of print email, we can change the message like sorry, and then we change the text that email cannot be sent from the simulator. If I click here, it will not work, but the URL will be loaded in the simulator. So if you want to test this two functionality, you have to use your device, and using USB cable you can check that whether this phone call is works or not. When I tested, in my case it works, so hopefully it will work for you as well. Sometimes when you learn something, at first you will not understand how this thing works. You just change some property and also check some documentation in the Flutter, then you will understand it more clearly. Whatever I have found, that if you know some React Native, if you know some CSS HTML, then styling is not very difficult to understand. It takes some time to create some small project to understand this thing clearly. And if you know React.js, then the concept of stateless widget and stateful widget is very clear. So in my future tutorial, I will discuss asynchronous programming and stateful widget. So I hope this tutorial will help you to understand how Flutter works and how to create a simple basic application. So thank you for watching and have a nice day. Goodbye.